What's going on, people? Welcome back to another Sunday afternoon podcasting session. This worked so well the last time that I'm hoping that it will do us some magic again. This time, I'm joined once again by Balaban, the guy who is thankful enough to have watched all that stuff with me and talk about it in November, like movies, TV shows, everything. You just have that shit on lock. And we are here today to talk about what is probably the most surprising holiday drop in over 10 years, in the sense that we have a holiday drop that is not attached to any major comic book IP. It is a movie that everybody was kind of expecting to fail. It is a movie that literally forced the studios to push what was supposed to be the big superhero holiday drop to next week, which is surprising to say the least. And it was a movie that I feel like a lot of people were planning, or not planning, but like expecting to bomb. And I think and I can safely say is definitely surprised me, to say the least. And then later on in this episode, we'll also be talking about American Fiction, which Gal got a chance to see back at TIFF in September, and I have not. And I actually just recently saw it yesterday. And Gal, before we get started, anything you want to say?
Let's get started. Yeah, that's all. I'm glad to be back.
Best intro words I could possibly think of. All this and more on today's episode of the Talkin TV podcast.
Nothing.
What is going on, people? Happy Sunday. It is a happy day for more than one reason, namely the first and foremost that I am done with school for the semester. So even though I'm only off for 2 weeks, I will definitely be just taking these next 2 weeks in order to catch up on all the movies that I still have yet to watch for the rest of the year that I had planned on watching already, that school didn't then just restricted me from time. I think if there's one thing that I can safely say, it is just to not be in school and just watch movies. I think if that's going to be the moral of this episode overall. What's it called? But we're talking about this movie first and foremost. And again, it was a movie that I was not expecting at all to have enjoyed as much as I did. It is a movie that I was not expecting at all to have, really to even watch. I was fully expecting to skip this one, but I got a ringing endorsement because I'm just going to say it out right now. Timothée Chalamet, the star of this movie, was actually taught by my teacher, who I have at the Neighborhood Playhouse School for Acting, which is the place where the Meisner acting technique is taught. And my teacher, Sandy Faison, was credited by him because she actually taught Timothée Chalamet when he went to high school at LaGuardia School for the Arts here in New York City. So he gave her a nice ringing endorsement, a nice shout out, credited her for helping him with his performance. And I mean, Gull, like, I'm trying to remember when this was announced. I think it was like maybe like a year or two ago that like Timothée Chalamet's next big project that he was going to do in between Dune parts 1 and 2 was going to be a Wonka prequel. Actually, I may have been even early. I think I may have actually heard about this, like, even like this might have even been like pre-COVID. Like, do you remember like when the first time you heard about this was?
I don't, but I do remember there was a big sort of competition as to who was going to be. I remember for a while people were thinking maybe Donald Glover was going to be Willy Wonka, which I think could have been fun. But yeah, there was a lot of debate. I think Timothée Chalamet ended up getting it. I didn't really have any plans to watch it until this episode.
Yeah. Well, it is funny. Well,
it
is fun. Yeah. It is funny because, like, you're right. Like, I was in the same camp where I'm like, why the fuck am I gonna watch a Willy Wonka? I'm like, on top of the fact that everything that Hollywood puts out now is pretty much just straight garbage. Like, why am I gonna go out of my way to watch a prequel for a movie that, like, apparently a lot of people love a lot more than I do? Like, I watched the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the one from the 70s, which also, it's not even the name of the book. It's the book is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but they retitled it Willy Wonka, I'm assuming because of the star power that Gene Wilder had in the 70s. And I remember watching it as a kid. I liked it. I had fun with it, but like apparently like that movie had like a big impact on people growing up. Like there are people who I know that are like obsessed with that movie and that IP and just the works of Roald Dahl in general. And I've seen like a decent amount of the Roald Dahl adaptations that they've done over the years. I've seen The Witches. I've seen unfortunately, both the Frank Oz one and the Robert Zemeckis one. I've seen James the Giant Peach. I've seen BFG. I've seen, what's the other one? I've seen Matilda in the 90s, directed frightfully by Danny DeVito. Both Matildas, that's right. But, what's it called? So I guess that, like, there's apparently, like, a new, like, incentive in the air for Roald Dahl works, because you also had the 4 Wes Anderson shorts that they did on Netflix back in September, The Wonderful World of Henry Sugar.
Absolutely.
And so, well, right when this gets announced, I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I don't have too much against Roald Dahl, but I've kind of outgrown that phase of my life. It's all like very kiddie and mystical and whimsical and wondrous. But I'm like, but it's a current Hollywood big budget musical production, and I've liked absolutely zero of the recent big budget musical productions that they've done that are like jukebox musicals takes. Because most of the time they've been like jukebox musical takes on what's called on famous musicians. You got Elvis, did not like that. Bohemian Rhapsody, did not like that. Rocket Man, did not like that. And then the one that kind of kicked it all off, Greatest Showman, was fun, and that one kind of got away with it because it wasn't it was, but it really wasn't a straight biopic. But that one, I'm
Wait,
like,
Greatest Showman gets a higher endorsement from you than Rocket Man?
yes, and I'll tell you
Interesting.
why. And I'll tell you why, because I had more fun with that one at the very least. Because I'll say this about it: for as much as I don't like the movie, at the very least, the songs are catchy enough and enjoyable enough. But so going into
Catchier than
this,
Queen and Elton John? Okay.
yeah.
Um,
But
that's a
but
bold statement.
I'll get more so. It's more so having to do with the fact that like they just straight those movies are more egregious to me because those movies go out of their way to straight up like, oh, this is gonna be a biopic, and then just not really being biopics, just being jukebox musicals. Greatest Showman is one of those things where it's like they straight up said, okay, we're not really doing this as a biopic. This is just like more of like a fun, whimsical musical. So if you try to come, so that they were like kind of getting out ahead of the criticisms of like, oh, this isn't like true to Barnum's life, and Barnum was like actually like an asshole and all that. And they straight up said, okay, we're not doing that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. At least you're being open and honest with what you're with the movie that you're trying to be, instead of all these other people who are just lying about, making biopics when that's clearly not what this is. But anyways, coming back to Wonka, my whole thing was that, okay, so it's a Wonka prequel, which, okay, I don't know why we need that, but again, why do we need anything that Hollywood makes now? And it's going to be a musical, and I'm like, okay, great. We all the big budget musicals that Hollywood's been putting out have been great track record lately. And it's even funny too, because I even saw a thing where it's like in focus testing, they literally don't tell people the reason why they don't market movie musicals is because they said that like audiences typically don't respond well to them. So they literally have to trick audience members into going and seeing them.
Is that really a thing? Because I
Apparently it
was
is.
thinking, because West Side Story and In the Heights didn't make a lot of money, and now
Yeah.
Wonka and The Color Purple and the new Mean Girls sort of have this similar
Yeah.
thing where it's no
Yep.
secret that they're all musicals, but they're not
Right.
really putting the singing anymore
Yeah. They're not marketing
in
them
the
as such.
films.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, but that is confirmed. That absolutely is a thing. And
In the trailers, I
so
mean.
so you had all that going against it, right? And on top of the fact, I didn't think the movie looked particularly enjoyable. It looked kind of like very artificial and fake. I'm like, okay, this entire thing is shot on like one set with a green screen and all around it. And again, all those things going against it. The only reason why I was going is because, like I said, my teacher taught Timothy, so I've kind of got a little bit of an invested stake. And also, there's a little bit of a tidbit. I also one of my classmates in school also looks exactly like him, and everybody in my school gives him shit for it, and it's like the funniest thing. But
It's
what's
a
it called?
compliment to look like Timothy
No,
Chalamet,
no,
though.
that's the thing. So you would think it's a compliment, but because of the way he reacts to it, it just becomes funnier and funnier. And we actually, it was really funny because we actually had a guest speaker, an alumni of our school, come in yesterday and give it a presentation. And he saw the kid and he called him Timothy Chalamet no less than 5 times, and we laughed every single time. But so,
That's great.
yeah. But so needless to say, you can imagine my surprise when I came out and I'm like, wow, that was just purely charming and delightful, which I just wasn't expecting at all. Like, at all. But
Yeah,
there's a
let me
couple.
say
Yeah.
let me say, I was in a similar boat. Like, my main incentive to go watch it was this recording that we're doing right now. So I was like, why not? And I had a friend who went with me yesterday that I knew he like actually wanted to watch it. So I was like, okay, let's go for the meme. And then I get a message from you a couple days ago saying, I can't believe I'm saying this. Wonka was fire. So that gives me a little hype. And I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score was high. And it's definitely better than I expected, more enjoyable than I expected. Some of the complaints that I had from the trailers still stand. I think it works as like a family film, but really, I think the saving graces of it are A, Paul King's direction, and B, the fact that it's a musical. I feel like without the musical breaks, it would have just felt like that really artificial and contrived sort of like Willy Wonka prequel. But then there's this clumsiness that's like put together with like the charming songs. I'm not saying they're like Oscar worthy written songs, but they do have a really sweet energy to it. And Paul King has like this really like British humor energy to it. It's adventurousness to it that I don't think Wonka would have succeeded at all without.
I agree 100,000%. Yeah. So going into this, right? So obviously Paul King had already kind of started to become, making the rounds because of the Paddington movies, right? Which people are very, very much a fan of. Like I know a decent amount of people, I have not seen them, but I know a decent amount of people who have, and everybody who I know that likes the Paddington movies like,
Yeah.
loves those movies. They think that they are so charming and so fan and just so light, And I think that's the key word here, right? Light, because you've got let's face it, right? We all know it. Every single movie that always comes around the holidays is an Oscar movie, is an Oscar baity movie, whether it's made for the purposes of winning Oscars or not. And 9 out of 10 times, those movies tend to be really bleak, really miserable, really dreary. They're not, I wouldn't say exactly like enjoyable movies. They always have to be very weighty. They always have to be very self-serious, And even you look at some of the bigger, most successful movies of the year, things like Oppenheimer, things like Killers of the Flower Moon. Again, very important, very, very important historical pieces, but very heavy, very weighty, very
You
existential.
actually sound like the screenwriter of a movie that we're gonna talk about later. You sound like
we'll get into that.
You sound like sort of like the voice of that movie.
It all ties together.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that in a little bit. But so I think that the key thing that I wrote in my Wonka review. So when I put it in my letterbox list originally, but I was riding high off the movie. I saw it with some friends in school. We were all laughing. We were having a blast during it. It was like, okay, this isn't the best movie ever made, but we're having such a fun time with it. I put it as number 1 on my letterbox page. It was purely as a joke. I'm like, there's no way this is actually going to stay there. But I was thinking about it, and I'm like, what this movie has that I feel like no other movie that has come out in the year 2023 has is it is, despite the fact that it has plenty of jokes in there about the exploitative nature of capitalism around that time period, again, it's not trying to have a message. It's not trying to shove, make you aware or bang you over the head with some real world issue. It's not trying to tell you how bleak and miserable everything is. It's just there to be light and fun and give you what movies are supposed to give you. It is there to give you an escape from reality, and it does it in the most charming and enjoyable way possible. Yes, this movie has villains, but they're not really like serious villains. They're like cartoony villains. They know the assignment. And regardless of your problems with the movie, and like I said, it's not a perfect movie, but I feel like just overall coming out of this and the fact that I'm like, oh my God, in this world that keeps just getting so much more miserable by the day, the fact that we can actually still have movies that just like kind of make people not laugh, because I feel like even that has like more of a cynical undertone to it now as well. But the fact that we can have a movie that just people can have fun with and come out feeling a little bit better about themselves. I know I sound like the people who I love to mock and roast on the internet, but I guess just I'm getting to that point now where I'm like, man, I could really use some more of these movies, because we really don't get that many of them, if at all. So I just for that reason alone, I was definitely probably a lot more lenient on this movie than everybody else is. So bringing it over to Timothée Chalamet himself, he's a guy who, again, there are people who love him. There are people who hate him. I'm one of the ones that's kind of in the middle. My whole thing is I have seen him be good in stuff. I've seen him be good in quite a lot of things, actually. But I've yet to be really wowed by him as a performer. I know a lot of people think that are mad because they're just like, oh, he just looks and acts like a kid, even though he's 27. And I'm like, okay, but you're an actor. You have to go based off of what you have looks-wise, So, and what's it called? But that's why I was even more interested when he got cast, obviously, as Paul Atreides in Dune, because he has like all of the perfect traits for that. If anything, he may be missing some more of like maybe the emotional maturity that he might need for that comes on later on in Dune Part 1. But as far as having the look, yeah, he nails that. So in terms of like the performance that he's done, right? It's primarily been younger, more so coming of age parts, like all the two Greta Gerwig movies that he's done, Call Me by Your Name, Beautiful Boys, such and so on and so on. Obviously his big breakout was in Interstellar, playing the younger Casey Affleck, which I think is hysterical because of a lot of because I remember Dustin telling me back in the day that he looked like a younger Casey Affleck. And my whole thing is that.
Did you watch Bones and All, by the way?
I Bones and All. That's the other one. That's the other one that I forgot about. Love that movie. In my top 5 of last year. Really enjoyed that.
That's a crazy
And
one.
loved it. But my whole thing with it is I'm like, is it just the modern day celebrity thing where because we know too much about we know so I feel like people know so much more about Timothée Chalamet as a personality than as an actor. And as a result, I feel like that prevents him from being able to like really give like a truly like jaw-dropping a different kind of a performance. But what I find interesting about his performance here is that while he's not exactly jaw-dropping and incredible, same I would say is with any of his performances. I think probably the most introspective that he's gotten is still Call Me by Your Name. And then Bones and All is probably a decent follow-up. But I guess what's most surprising here is that it's a thing that I've learned in my acting on pitch class, which is where there's a big difference between being able to sing really well, being able to act really well, and then doing them both at the same time. And what I will say is it's very clear that Timmy is not the best singer. In fact, I would argue that again, because there's so much auto-tune in this movie. And I will admit that probably the weakest element that I have is that the sound mixing is pretty crap, which is kind of insane because it's a musical. You would think that that would, specifically a musical movie, you would think that that would be number one on their priorities list. But there was something about how Timothy is able to play it where like he understands all the beats and it feels so against type for him because even though he is very skinny and very wiry, I've never seen him play this kind of like kooky, klutzy, ne'er-do-well,
Yeah.
very, very loved, almost like a Charlie Chaplin or like a Buster Keaton, but with like no underlying cynicism.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't really agree with like what was it? Because I do feel like people do take him seriously as an actor. It's pretty unique to get nominated at I think age 21 for an Oscar for acting.
Mm.
So I think he was always respected, but I think definitely like look, let's be real. He's pretty handsome. He's considered as like this handsome guy by the internet,
Yep.
by all these girls
Yep.
On the internet, right? So I think he very much gets like a rep in public for that. But
And we do
he's
know
a
that
great
when it comes to
performer.
your movie star persona, if you have teen girls on the internet on your side, you're already doing something right.
He's definitely a personality, which is why I think like when a lot of people heard Timothy Chalamet as Wonka, they were like, "Oh, it's because he's famous." But I do think he really fit the role. I think he like really throws himself into the physical comedy. I think the Chaplin comparison was honestly really good, um, and I thought he sang pretty well, even though I'm not like I can't like judge him professionally. I'm not a professional singer. I do also think Kayla Lane is really good. I think this is her first big thing. They have a really sweet friendship, and then they also have all these outcast friends who work for Olivia Colman. Olivia Colman, by the way, can do no
Olivia Colman's
wrong.
awesome.
She's
Again,
great as
all of the other
the
like older British like alumni that have worked with Paul King they're in this like your Olivia Colmans, your Hugh Grants as the Oompa Loompa, like that. All those guys are
yeah.
great because they all exactly understood the assignment. This sort of like again wry, sardonic types of performances that just
I'll be
cracked me up at
honest.
certain moments.
I'll be honest. Hugh Grant as the Oompa Loompa. Maybe it's not his fault, but the CGI was like horrible in my opinion. Like putting his face on like the tiny Oompa Loompa body, like it was distracting for me. And then Keegan Michael Key, I also felt I think the Italian accent was just really unexpected,
That was
which I
funny.
think like threw me off in the beginning. But everyone else, like Jim Carter, is really good. Natasha Rothwell, Rowan Atkinson. When he first comes into frame, the whole audience like started laughing because they knew like shit was gonna go down.
Yeah,
I would
Rowan
honestly compare
Atkinson
it a
is one of
little
those
bit to
guys.
his
He
role
doesn't even
in.
have to. Rowan Atkinson doesn't have to do a goddamn thing facial expressions wise. Sorry,
It's
word
like
wise.
in
He'll just make one facial expression and the whole audience will be cracking up laughing. There's a scene that happens in the middle of the movie involving a giraffe that is like one of the funniest sequences of the year.
It's like in Love Actually, where he kind of just like you don't need him for the plot, but he's just there to like consume screen time, and you're just really grateful for it. Um, I would say the giraffe. I don't know. All the animal CGI didn't really look good. The giraffe, the flamingos. I did not like the whole CGI part of this movie.
Yeah.
Even like the big chocolate shop effects. It really looked artificial for me, which is why I said like if it was just like that scene with like a musical score or a scene in the background, like that would have I would have been like, oh, this is really artificial. But the fact that it was a musical number, there was a song, like that managed to like distract me sometimes from the CGI being kind of bad.
Yeah, I don't know. The CG, it bothered me a little bit at first with how artificial it looked. But what I'll say is that there was at least a consistency to it. It wasn't like there were certain sequences in the movie that like looked better than others because it kind of had right that kind of like flat artificiality across the board. But it kind of but it knew but it did it. I feel like it did it purposefully. I don't think that with the CGI they were trying to make it look super realistic because it's supposed to like contribute to the magic and the whimsy, and because the actual designs of the sets were so were so creative and colorful and have all this inventiveness to them. Because of that, those were the parts I'm like, okay, like this is supposed to be whimsical, it's supposed to be magic, it's supposed to be kiddie, it's like this isn't supposed to like be the equivalent like a big budget like music. It's supposed to be almost like have this emulated like made for TV like Saturday morning kiddie home movie sort of a thing. And so that I guess that's why the
No,
CG didn't bother me as much.
No, as a kids movie, as like a holiday movie for like the family to go to on winter break, 10 out of 10 for sure. But
Absolutely.
I feel like sometimes there are moments in the movie where I like laughed out loud, like a couple lines where I just really laughed. But then there's also it has this fair amount of lines where I was just like, okay, maybe only kids would laugh at that, or maybe
Right.
this kind of missed the mark. Especially, I'm not one to like criticize Hugh Grant much. I love the guy, but something about his whole character just missed the mark for me.
Well, the
Maybe it was the
character.
CGI,
Well, yeah,
but
I
the
would say that
writing
when it
also
comes
it was just whatever.
I mean, I would say that when it comes to Hugh Grant specifically, like that character is the one that kind of has the least to do because that was the one where it's like, oh, they have to put this in there because the Oompa Loompas are a
They
thing,
need to check
And
the box.
yeah,
Don't be
yeah,
like, hey, we got an Oompa Loompa. Come watch us. We're a Willy Wonka movie.
no, exactly. And then like I said, he doesn't really contribute much to the plot. Like there's supposed to be this whole thing where he like saves Timothy Chalamet from Wonka from getting blown up, but then he really doesn't. He's just there to like kind of like mock him the whole time. And then at the end, Timmy's like, "Oh, want to come and work for me?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, so that's where this is going." So yeah, the Hugh Grant thing, like they were making a big deal because they're like, "Oh, they got Hugh Grant for the movie." It's he's back in like a posh British role, but I'm like, you could have cut him from the movie and it would have made absolutely no difference to me. But what I will say, as far as the rest of the cast goes, like I said, like you said, there were some moments where, again, with the humor, where it's like, okay, are we going kid friendly or are we not? Because there were some moments, yeah, that were like just kind of corny and stupid that I just like kind of was forced to laugh at. But there were some moments that legitimately had me laughing like hard, like the whole stupid moment where they were using like Olivia Colman's right hand guy to distract her by having him pose as like a Bulgarian royal and that whole thing. It was so stupid. It was
Yeah,
enjoyable.
yeah, yeah.
And then when everybody in the candy shop started growing, like their skin started changing color and growing hairs out. And probably the joke that had me laughing the hardest was when they were doing the break into the vault and they were giving the one they were giving the woman who guards the vault like the candy that like makes her drunk
Oh, that
basically.
was
And then she calls
phenomenal.
her lover,
I
who
like
turns out to be the zookeeper, who they'd already used the candy on like 2 times before that. That had me that was probably
yeah,
the
and he like
hardest laugh of
already
the whole
drunk called
movie.
her. That like
That you want to talk about good setup
if
and
that had
payoff right
just
there.
been this, if that was like the only thing in the movie, if that was just like a short film of that, it would have still been like that whole thing is like perfect, bro. That whole joke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was great. And then yeah, all the shit with the hat and everything. Yeah, like I said, it was charming, it was whimsical, it was fun. And like I said, it was as like a holiday movie made for kids primarily because that's who this service is, and like it had the endearing moments that like I will say the endearing moments that like really hit close to the heart, like really hit home for me, like the scene with his like all the scenes with the flashbacks of his mom and all that when he's sitting there singing singing World of Pure Imagination at the end because they're going to do that right before he
Oh,
constructs the
Sally Hawkins
factory.
was even more underused than I think you were saying Hugh Grant didn't have much to do. Sally Hawkins is like
No, but the
kind of
difference is
only
that
there because she's friends with Paul King.
right. No, but the difference there too is that character, unlike the Hugh Grant character, where it's like they kind of trick you into thinking that he's gonna have like an important part of the plot, and that it really doesn't. Sally Hawkins, like she
Yeah.
serves her part. Like it's very clear that like okay, she's passed on and whatnot, and he's like doing this in memory of her, because like he loved her chocolates growing up that she made for him, and so
True.
that sort
I
of
was
thing.
kind of relieved
Like
though that the Oompa Loompa wasn't in it too much.
yeah,
Unpopular
yeah.
opinion.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, like, I mean, and I'll admit that I'm a little biased here, because every time you have like a plot point where it's like, oh, a character's motivation is to like make their like dead parent, is to like make their dead parent proud, that whole thing, whatever, that just always hits home for me. That always works really well for me. I don't know what it is about it. It just works every time. Like I said, when you've got this just like that stab of the heartstrings right there. But yes, and that moment at the end, that really, really worked, and that really hit home for me. And yeah, all the rest, like I said, is this the best movie of the year? No. But like I said, is it gonna win a ton of Oscars? No. Is it the best looking movie of the year? No. But just in terms of, like I said, all those things above, fun, whimsical, knows what it is, doesn't overstay its welcome, and just is like a fun holiday movie. That's the other thing too. This is the first movie that I've seen at the holidays in over 10 years that feels like a holiday movie, and not in like an annoying way. Because literally the last 10 years of holiday releases have been like big budget releases, whether it's, Avatars or last year you got Avatar, year before that is No Way Home. Again, both good, enjoyable movies, but it's like we haven't had like an actual holiday movie that feels like a holiday movie. Probably the last one that I saw was Klaus, and that got dropped right on Netflix. So
yeah, there's like all these holiday movies that are like you said, like trying super hard to be holiday movies. Like the one that just came out with Eddie Murphy on Candy Cane Lane, I think, on Amazon, or
yeah,
um,
exactly.
almost every Netflix movie. There was like two in 2020 that had like the word Christmas in it. It was like a Christmas journey, and then something else with Christmas. I don't
Yep.
remember. Then 8-bit
Yep.
Christmas. There was a bunch of. I haven't seen most of those, but I like one that's like, it's one of those where, look, it's not great. It's better than some of the other like holiday winter break musicals that have come out in the past years, like Greatest Showman or Into the Woods. But it's one that, like I said, like if you're with kids, definitely go. If you're an adult and you're trying to see something in the winter break, I would say see this and something else. Like watch
Yeah.
this and The Holdovers. Watch this and Poor Things.
Yeah,
Like,
Holdovers as
this
well, I
and
would definitely say,
if
like, definitely
this
also was one
one.
that nails the holiday spirit too.
Oh, for real, yeah.
Yeah, definitely does. Yeah, what's it called? Yeah, man, the Holdovers, that's still one that's like, man, that one still holds with me. Yeah, and then have you seen Klaus?
I actually haven't. I haven't seen that one, but
I
I
would
know it's
very, very
nominated for
much.
an Oscar.
I would very, very much recommend that one. That one's kind of become like one of my holiday staples. I watch that like every holiday season. It's
Oh,
probably
I just remembered what was the other. I just remembered what was the name of the other corny Netflix movie that I was thinking about. Christmas Chronicles with Kurt
yeah, with Kurt
Russell.
Russell.
I
I
haven't
kind of
seen it
like that
either.
one. I kind of like
I haven't
that
seen
one.
that, but it
I didn't
also
see the
looks corny.
sequel, but that first one with Kurt Russell, that was kind of funny, because that was another one like,
I
oh,
heard it got
everybody
good
involved just
reviews.
movies
I
that.
just
It was pretty
never
good,
cared to
honestly.
watch it.
It was actually, that one was actually pretty good. I will say, like, everybody involved understood the assignment. It's like, yeah, it's Kurt Russell as Santa Claus. You know exactly what you're getting there. There's a scene where like he gets thrown in jail.
Oh,
What were you saying?
I did watch Violent Night with David
That
Harbour as
seemed
Santa
fun.
Claus.
I wanted to watch that one from last year, and I wanted to watch the Fat Man, the one with Mel Gibson, because I don't know what it is, but it's like every time you have like a jaded, cynical, sweating, like cigar chopping Santa Claus. Like that just tickles my funny bone. It's just like the best way possible. It's like I don't even care what the movie's about. You got Santa Claus with a machine gun, played by someone like Mel Gibson or Dave Harbour, just taking motherfuckers out left and right. Like, you're getting me. I'm sorry.
They need to complete the trilogy someday. Maybe like Christopher Walken
I
as
got
Santa
it.
Claus or something.
Oh no, I got it. Ready? I got it. Taken 5, Liam Neeson, but he's as Santa Claus now.
Oh,
and then the circle will be complete.
Oh god.
And then the circle of shitty Liam Neeson action movies will be complete.
I think you've created a monster, my friend.
I would listen, if they did that, all the Taken sequels would be redeemed. And every shitty Taken ripoff movie that Liam Neeson has done in the last 10, 15 years would be redeemed. But oh man, but yeah, we're gonna move on to American Fiction now. But before we wrap it up, God, what's your star rating and final thoughts for Wonka?
Okay, final thoughts. Look, I had my good times with it. I also think it was kind of stupid. But like I said, Paul King directed it, which made it a lot better than I thought it would be. From the trailer, like I remember the trailer played in front of, I think, the Marvels, and I like could not stand the trailer. I was begging for it to end. but I actually had my fair share of good times with it. Would I watch it again? No. Would I mind if it was playing in the background? Definitely not. Timothy Chalamet is good. I'd say like go if you have like you have younger audiences, and honestly, I'd say he delivers a performance that's like deserves to be talked about when we talk about like those three great performances now as Willy Wonka. But I'd give it 3 out of 5 as a whole.
Yeah. I'm gonna go a little bit higher. I give this one 4 out of 5. Like I said, I again, even if a movie is not the best and one of my favorites, if it understands what it is and as I like to say, understanding the assignment, then I'm not gonna like fault it too much. Obviously, like I said, there were parts of this that still didn't work for me. The sound mixing in particular, I thought was really, really poor. I don't quite know what happened there, but other than that, like I said, I had an absolute blast with this. I knew exactly once I was about like 20, 30 minutes.
If you like
Exactly the
Paddington,
type of movie that
there
it was.
you go.
I have not seen the Paddington movies. That's the thing. But like I said, all my friends who really enjoy the Paddington movies really, really enjoy them. And like I said, if they're anything
I
like
think
this,
it
I
bears a
definitely
lot of
will thoroughly
similarities
enjoy them.
to it bears a lot of similarities to Paddington. Weirdly, a lot of similarities to another origin movie, Cruella. I think there's a lot of plot
Really?
similarities. Um, like like the whole orphan thrown away, and then there's like the corrupt rich person, and then there's like someone's trying to start like becoming some sort of like icon to the poor. There's some similarities there.
All right, all right. Oh man, you might have to. You might have convinced me to actually go and watch Cruella. And
But
I
I
said,
did because he's like opening a shop, he's like making a resource, and then he gets in trouble with the cartel. My letterbox review was Breaking Bad for kids. So
That's funny. Yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I had fun with this one for sure. If you want, and I could definitely recommend this as like the feel good holiday movie of the year, which I didn't think I was going to. So there's that. And now moving in the completely opposite direction, going back towards the jaded, the cynical, the exploitative nature of certain people by the entertainment systems. American Fiction, the movie that the little movie that basically again, you would not heard of this movie
yeah,
before Toronto, and then it won the People's Choice Award at Toronto and has had just like a steamroller of momentum behind it since then. I saw the first trailer when it
absolutely.
came out and was instantly like, this has become my most anticipated movie for the rest of the year. I love movies that just take shot after shot at the establishment, where you have a movie that is about a black writer who can't get any of his books sold because he likes to write about like, actual literature. But all of the white publishing agents just want like, again, black stories, again, stories about being in the ghetto and crackheads and,
He
kids that grew
lives
up
in the
without
ghetto,
dads
yeah.
and gun violence, all the sorts of things that like white publishers typically look for. And so one night as a joke, he sits down drunk and writes that and writes exactly that under a pseudonym and submits it. And all of the white publishers just start going nuts about it. And it's one of those things where every time he tries to sabotage the process, and they just keep getting more and more and more interested. He even changes the title at one point to something that is just so stupid and overtly provocative. And of course, all the idiot white publishers are going for it. I saw this trailer and was just like, the minute that Issa Rae starts reading the quote from her book, and you just see him go like this, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm in. I know exactly what type of movie this is. So
No, it's
you
the
got
editing in the trailer of her doing like the super like strong black accent and then
sincere,
cutting
right?
directly to the audience like getting up and like standing
Specifically
ovation.
cutting to the one
It's very
older white woman that stands up in front of him as he's looking at it. So
yeah,
you got to see this at TIFF when it first
yeah.
came out in September. Walk me through that. Was the audience
No.
reaction to that?
I only saw it. I only saw it last week. Actually, I didn't see it at TIFF.
Oh, you
I
didn't see it at TIFF. Oh, I thought you said you did.
no, I didn't know too much. Like I heard that it was this movie with Jeffrey Wright, and people were really liking it. And then it won the audience award, which I don't want to say I was bummed because I hadn't seen anything. I was just like bummed that it went to a movie that I didn't see. But obviously after that, I was like very much motivated to watch it.
Yeah,
But I only
and
saw it
especially
like a week ago or
and
so.
especially once the trailer comes out, you're like, oh, I gotta see this.
Yeah,
Like I
because I
showed this
saw the
to all
trailer
my
when it played when I watched Saltburn, I think, and I was like,
yeah.
"Oh damn, that does look
You're like, this looks
that does look really
good.
good."
Yeah, and
Um,
so yeah,
so yeah,
but yeah.
basically it's duking on. So the way I think the way like black voices were popularized in cinema were through these movies about black pain and trauma. We're talking about movies like Boys in the Hood or Precious, if you watch that movie,
Menace to
or 12
Society is
Years a
another good
Slave,
one. Yeah.
even the original Color Purple. Um, like almost every movie where, and I've even heard this from the internet for a while, that we're just like, hey, why can't we get movies that are just about black people? Like, why does it have to be about them suffering immensely? Um, and like one of the first lines in the movie is Jeffrey Wright saying, like his agent saying they want a blacker book, like write a black book, and he's like, I'm black and it's a book. Why isn't it a black book then? And that kind of sums up the nature of this movie and how much it's poking fun at the establishment, and it kind of makes us look at that for a while. Like, why did we only let like these black led films into the mainstream conversations when they were about black suffering? And I think I don't know when it was particularly, but like for example, Black Panther was one movie that suddenly emphasized black joy, and now we get a
Right.
lot more of these like black led films that aren't just about slavery and so on.
Right.
Um, but Jeffrey Wright's in particular really good because I've he's always been around. He's always been really acclaimed, but perhaps more known for a supporting player. I think I only really started to appreciate him. I'd always known who he was because I think the Hunger Games and so on, but I only really started to appreciate him when I watched Westworld during the pandemic. And then, of course, he was in the most recent couple of Wes Anderson movies, and uh, and so here he's well deserved getting Oscar buzz because he also has this movie sort of has two sides. It has the family drama where he's dealing with a lot of personal loss and this relationship that he's getting into, and then there's the side of him getting super exaggerated and playing it like a straight comedy where he's doing the black accent. He's playing into the joke. He's playing into everything he hates about the establishment just so he can stick it to the industry.
Yeah, you couldn't have summed it up. I couldn't have summed it up better if I tried. Yeah, the family drama stuff. That's the stuff that the trailers didn't really highlight. Right, the trailers are just like highlighting all
Mhm.
the jokes, just like one after another, and they're doing it really, really well. And for the most part, they don't do that thing that I hate when trailers do, which is they take certain scenes from movies and they compress them in order to try and make them funnier. And then you watch them in movies and they're not as funny. But this one, all the jokes led specifically the opening scene, which was not included in any of the trailers, with the argument with the white student and the usage of the N word instantly just like had the entire audience in stitches laughing.
Oh
That
yeah,
was great. That was great. That like perfect way to just like lock you in,
and
draw you into the
that I
movie.
feel like that's a thing that I feel like, like a lot of people know because, whenever you're in like high school or college and you're reading a book and it's by Toni Morrison or any sort of book that's supposed to be about like black pain or black struggle, and they have the N word, like the teacher tries to say it to make a point. So I feel like we know that a lot. Like
Yeah,
it's
we
just a
know
word.
exactly
Like we're
what
trying
that
to
is.
remove the stigma from the word. Like we know that situation.
Yeah, that was great. I love that. But I think the most surprising thing was again just how endearing and heartfelt it was, but much more so than I thought it was going to be. I go into this expecting this fully to be like again poking fun at the establishment. Not really what's it called? Not really taking itself too seriously, just being really jaded and cynical about it. Be like, oh man, the whole thing, right? It used to be like, I thought we were moving past this and moving into the stories of like, away from every black movie has to be and book has to be about like drug dealers or slavery or something like that. And now it's like taking on this whole new form where
Mhm.
now they're just continuing to reiterate those types of stories, but now it's in a form of like, oh, this is strength. This is the power of our story, and it's going into that bullshit. Jeffrey Wright's a guy who's just absolutely had it, writes this thing as a joke in order to poke fun of it. But then it ends up like getting more and more, and so that in a way I feel like is kind of and that was very Adam McKay-ish, which I appreciated as well. Where it's like, yeah, the idea of just like the more stupid and ridiculous it gets, the more momentum it gets until it kind of like becomes like this old thing. And I think like if you want to jump ahead and talk about the ending as well, I think the ending kind of summed that up really, really well. But I think for me the biggest surprise is when he confronts the Issa Rae character, where he's kind of got like a bone to pick with
Yeah.
her, where he's like where he's like, they're talking about and criticizing his book, which has been of course now submitted for this massively prestigious award. And she's like, yeah, it's incredibly lowbrow and only shows us for our worst. And he's like trying to talk to her afterwards, and he's like, but you're doing the same thing. and all that. And basically what she ends up telling him is, it's like, yeah, it sounds like your problem is not necessarily with me. Your problem is because at the end of the day, she's like, I'm doing this in order to like, this is my way of sticking it to them by giving them exactly what it is they want, you know? So it sounds like your problem is not with me, but also with yourself and also with everybody else. So they kind of turn it back around in the sense of like, again, they show you a
Yeah,
lot of his
so
personal
I
life. Yeah.
Yeah, so I listened to a lot of Cord Jefferson talking about the movie. He actually said this was based on a book that he read and he loved. He said in the interviews, he said this was like a gift made to him, this book. So that scene that you're talking about was the big addition that he made to the book. That he felt like he wanted to like have that discussion out loud. And I like that he doesn't say that either side is wrong, because
Right.
he's not saying these black artists like Steve McQueen are bad for
Barry
making 12 Years a
Jenkins.
Slave,
Right.
or yeah, exactly. Like, but he's more criticizing the establishment that has set it up so that we have to feed the white people what they want. And I also
Right.
love, you talked about that opening scene a little bit. All these white people that are sort of like fake woke, I guess, like they think that by getting mad on behalf of black people, like they're doing all the work. But it's just incredibly cringe from the
Right.
perspective of a black person. So I
Right.
sort of love that criticism as well.
Yeah. Which I will say, and again, there was a little bit of Boondocks thrown in there as well, because I know Boondocks touched on this a lot when you had like white people getting really, really angry and like trying to like, you know, be defending of black people. Then you would just have like the Boondocks family in the background just being like, dude, shut up. Like, you're not helping at all. And so I definitely was like seeing a little bit of that in there as well. I'm glad that you brought up Cord Jefferson though, because, and specifically his interviews, because I was listening to his interview on the Bill Simmons podcast, and I have a slight bone to pick with him. Not as
Oh, yeah.
the writer or director. I think when it comes to this movie, I think he did a phenomenal job adapting the book. And again, it was really, really funny. It was really, really poignant. And I think everything he wanted to get across was great. I have a little bit of a problem with him as a creator, because I find it very, very high and mighty of him to be criticizing the establishment when, right, in this movie, it basically say that, like, yeah, it's like, you know, white people basically set this whole system up in play. White people basically set this whole system up with that is basically designed to exploit us, and there's kind of nothing that we could do in order to get around it. But then you have him in multiple interviews basically describing that he doesn't exactly believe in the idea of race as it is. And I'm like, okay, if you were going to back that up and kind of do what Ava DuVernay did with her movie that's coming out, Origin, and talk about that in the sense of like, oh, have it be more of like a classist setup rather than a straight race and skin color setup, okay, that's one thing, and I'd be cool. But he really doesn't. And he kind of just goes and he's like trying to have it both ways. And I'm like, so which is it? Like, so are you part of the establishment? So it's like, is the establishment the bad guy and you're just like kind of sticking it to them? Or are you just profiting off of them and you've just become another phony just like everybody else? So I've got a slight bone to pick with him there. Not to mention the fact that he pitched possibly one of the absolute worst ideas for an Entourage reboot that I have ever heard, ever. And actually, it's like, it basically kind of showed his colors. It's like, oh, he just hates Entourage. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But then why are you trying to pitch it as something that would be like funny, creative? He's basically trying to pitch it in the sense of like, oh, Ari Gold would get canceled. And I'm like, yeah, but okay, first of all, they already did that on the show. And if they were to do that now, it would just be bad, because every time they try to do a cancellation plot in anything now, it's bad and forced. And he was doing this other thing where it's like, yeah, E is representing TikTokers now, and he just gets like the shit kicked out of him by them, and they're always pranking him. Drama's like a MAGA podcaster who does diet supplements as part of his branding. And then the one funny bit of his pitch was that Drama supplements start making people go blind. That was actually funny. But everything else, I was just like, ugh. And then and then what is it? He's like, Turtle's dead from a fentanyl overdose, but his ghost is still there. And then fucking Vince
I
is
haven't
trying
seen
to
this
get
show,
it.
so I have no idea
Bro,
what you're talking about.
Dude, this is okay. Okay, so but this is more so for the Entourage fans out there that listen in. But his pitch ends with Ari Gold committing suicide because of being canceled, and then the camera just pans up and the theme song starts playing, and I'm like, oh, so you just hate Entourage. You just want to do this as a blatant middle finger to the creator and everything that show stands for. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can, but don't try and make it seem like you're like the fan of the show. So yeah, that was, like I said, little nitpicks, right? It's not necessarily, but it's not necessarily, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm as fan of him, because knowing that that's how he thinks, and knowing that like he might be a little bit more of an establishment phony than he lets on, which sucks because again, this movie is probably one of the best taking down the establishment movies that I've seen in recent memory. So
I will say, dude is like a little more esteemed than you're making him out to be, just because he's like, first of all, he wrote Succession, a bit of Succession. I don't know how much he worked on it, but he
I
also
think so.
did
I
work
mean,
on Watchmen, which
yeah, he wrote an episode of
Watchmen.
Watchmen.
Kind of funny that we think about that now, because it's like that show is so much about white supremacy and like, the Tulsa massacre.
Yeah,
But
and Master of None as well.
I do think. Oh, I still haven't seen that. But
yeah, you should
he's
watch that.
definitely like, what I will say is this movie's like the most introspective that we've seen from this year, especially like he's not just sort of like middle fingering the establishment in this fun way. I think he's also sort of like self-reflecting as a writer, and like especially like probably struggling like with his identity. I think we get like some more dramatic moments from Jeffrey Wright when he's dealing with stuff that's happening at home, and how he's trying to like figure out his place like with writing and being there with his family. Which I want to go now into my next positive, which is a huge positive, which is Mr. Sterling K. Brown.
Yes,
who
absolutely
is hysterical in this
kills
movie.
it. Kills it in this
movie. I would low key nominate him just for how silly he is. Like he's not even like, if you've seen him in like even SNL or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like he's really out there sometimes with his comedy. He's not even doing that here. Like sometimes he like restrains his voice and like just says something really funny that you wouldn't expect, but he's just really goofy in this movie, and I loved him so much for that. That his character kind of doesn't give a fuck, and yeah, he's really great, and I was just so glad whenever he takes up screen time, and also John Ortiz, like the dynamic he has with his agent is really good, and we talked a bit about Issa Rae already. Erica Alexander is very good. I'd say she's a bit more on the serious side in this movie.
Yeah, she's great. Even Leslie Uggams, who has a brief spot as his mom, who's going through like a battle with Alzheimer's and dementia, has some really good moments. You know, obviously, you know, Deadpool fans will know her as Blind Al from Deadpool. Yeah, this movie's got a really good cast, and it makes good use of it too. It's not just like, oh, here's a famous person that's in there just to pop in for 2
Adam
seconds.
Brody.
Adam Brody is the agent. That scene killed me when he like ran out of there because he saw the ambulance and thought it was for his mom. And then after the fact, it's like, oh yeah, they want to offer you even more other than they were originally willing to offer you because he just thought that you were like super real and everything. And he's like doing all these like, you know, bullshitty Hollywood things. And that, it was so good. But yeah, like you were saying, the movie's balance in tone, right? Between the more serious moments and the very jokey moments that are like poking fun at the establishment. Like there's this one scene in there where he first starts writing the novel, and he's like visualizing it, and one of the characters that he visualizes is Keith David, and they start looking at him and just be like, oh, so what do I say next? And that scene killed me, especially because Keith David was originally
I didn't know Keith David was going to be in it,
right? Especially because Keith David was supposed
to
have
the
original part. Yeah,
plays the younger. So the other actor who plays the younger guy, he was in Hamilton and part of the original cast. We didn't even mention Tracy Ellis Ross.
Yeah, right. Who's in it for like 5 minutes and then leaves the
cast.
movie very unexpectedly and very tragically too. Like that literally came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, what?
I did not expect that. And then Michael Cyril Creighton is, if you might know him from Only Murders in the Building, he plays one of the agents who's trying to offer him a movie deal.
Oh, that was incredible. That was incredible. That scene with it's like,
when they're trying to like think of the word for do-rag. That was funny.
When Jeffrey Wright is just like a do-rag, oh my god! Oh, it's just like
every time he like puts his head down in frustration.
It's just priceless. It is just absolutely priceless. But then the movie even turns it back on him because it's one of those things where again the movie is also criticizing like the artists, where it's like the artists are mad that people don't understand that people keep going for like stuff that is light and easy, but it's like because people like stuff that's light and easy because they don't want to have to overly intellectualize everything. And that's something that artists, I will definitely say, do sometimes have a hard time with, because it's also poking fun at artists just as much, where it's like artists typically find themselves trapped in this bubble that doesn't actually give them a whole lot of interaction with real people and what real people like. That's why I always talk about, like, when it comes to like, being able to watch movies early. Being able to watch movies early is great. But a lot of the time I'm like, yeah, I would rather wait and watch a movie when a real audience that's not people in the industry can see it, because I trust their opinions way more than people that are in the industry, because the people in the industry are criticizing it only for one of two reasons: because they're either trying to suck up and kiss up to somebody in order to try and potentially get more jobs, or just because they're completely disconnected. But I prefer hearing the thoughts of real people, because real people don't have any sort of a stake in that. So whenever they're being honest about something, regardless of whether they don't understand something about the movie, at the very least, they're giving their full honest take on it. And so that I thought was another really interesting aspect of Jeffrey Wright's character. And I thought it was particularly telling in one of the last scenes of the movie with his mom, where she's sitting down and talking to him, and she's like, she's like, you're a genius, and geniuses don't feel like geniuses because they don't know how to connect with regular people. And I'm like, yeah, that's honestly something that I can say this right now. That is something that I have dealt with a lot in my life. Not the genius part, I'm not saying that, but like I would say that growing up I had like higher than average intelligence, and it made it very, very difficult for me to make friends and just connect with people, socially growing up. So yeah, so that kind of struck a little home for me, and especially to see where it's like he has to falling out with Erica Alexander, and like they don't get back together really at all. Where they have this one thing where that at the end where they have like a couple of fake endings. I won't spoil what they are, but they are quite amusing in terms of how they are utilized, in the sense of where, yeah, he loses like what is otherwise a really healthy and nice relationship because he just can't get out of his own way. And I think that's really interesting and a fascinating tidbit, and is a necessary part of this that they easily could have scrapped and just been like, oh, here's more jokes poking fun at how stupid these white authors are, And at the end of the day, that's it.
Yeah, there's like an ending shot, like the final shot of the movie, that I think, like, if you weren't already really into the movie, it'll like bring the movie up for you. Not even the ending itself, like you said, is really good. Which is like going up to not just like writing, but like joking about Hollywood. But then there's this final shot that is so clever that, like, I won't even spoil it, but I was like, damn, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Like,
not to mention the fact that like Sterling K. Brown and the comparison says like, oh, they asked who should play me. Who? Tyler Perry. That killed me. That absolutely killed me. Yeah, Sterling K. Brown was great.
Yeah, they were like, if I'm ever in a movie like Tyler Perry, I remember that.
Yeah, that was great.
Sterling K. Brown, bro, I would shout him out for this movie. And it's nice. Like again, this is a movie that kind of like no one expected, and then it won the TIFF Audience Award in a festival where you got movies from Richard Linklater, Hayao Miyazaki, Alexander Payne.
And Cord Jefferson was talking about this. Literally, again, like you said, Hayao Miyazaki, Richard Linklater, Wes Anderson, David Fincher, Christopher Nolan, Martin Scorsese, Yorgos Lanthimos. I feel like the only person that was missing from this lineup this year are people who put out movies in the year 2023 were Spielberg and Tarantino, Like, I feel like this year, just like every big filmmaker just had a movie to put out there. And the fact that Cord Jefferson, that this movie
really good.
And the fact that like American Fiction is getting, and now it's like potentially up to be nominated for multiple awards. It's potentially could be nominated for Best Picture. Jeffrey Wright could be a shoo-in for director. I definitely think it's getting nominated for adapted screenplay, if nothing else. Sorry, for Best Actor. Yeah.
Yeah, adapted screenplay. It's like leading in the conversation. We could see actor. We could see Sterling K. Brown pull it. He just got into the Critics' Choice for supporting actor.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool.
And there's someone that they really like. And it's looking like it's getting nominated for a lot of like those best film categories, like AFI National Board of Review Top List, Critics' Choice Awards, Golden Globes for musical or comedy. I think at this point it's a very strong bet to get nominated for Best Picture, and I'm always really excited to see that when a first-time director is suddenly like getting their films praised alongside films directed by Nolan, Scorsese, Yorgos Lanthimos, Greta Gerwig, etc.
Right, Greta Gerwig is another one.
Kind of felt the same when like Emerald Fennell first entered the conversation with like Promising Young Woman, or all of us with like Greta Gerwig with Lady Bird, or Jordan Peele with Get Out. It's like this first time director with like
Right.
such a
And like,
big thing to say.
he's not technically like a first-time director, right? He's worked a lot in TV. You know, obviously, again, Master of None, consultant on Succession, Watchmen, Station 11. I saw he also wrote an episode of. So like, he's been around, he's worked stuff, but like for him, like getting this much praise for like his first like big feature film as well, and especially because I think he's had this novel since like 2017, 2018. That's always really cool, you know. And if this ends up being like the big surprise hit of the year, like I would be really, really happy about that, you know. Especially because again, I feel like people would want to put this in a box and make this as just like, oh, it's just another poking fun at the establishment comedy, and it is so much more than that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So with that being said, your final thoughts and star rating for American Fiction.
Final thoughts, definitely watch it. Believe the awards hype. Um, Funny, emotional. I'd give it 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I raise it a half star higher, 4.5 out of 5. This was, again, I was
Yeah,
laughing.
for sure.
This is probably the hardest that I laughed at a movie since Joyride over the summer. But like I said, it's just that the fact
Oh,
that
Joyride was funny. That
Joyride
was
was
really funny.
fucking hilarious. But again, just for this being like having a lot more quiet, poignant moments that I was not expecting. Like I really, really enjoyed it. Had a good time with this one. This one, like, oh man, the more movies I watch, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this top 10 for the end of the year is going to be one of the most difficult top 10 lists that I have ever put. And I'm also going to be really interested. It's going to be a really, really difficult top 10, but I am also really interested to see what this movie's Oscar chances are going to be going forward. And also, I meant to ask you this before we get out of here. The Oscar. So every year I try to do like an Oscars panel, you know, where we try to predict like what's going to get nominated. And so before the nominations get announced in January, you want to be on for that episode?
Hell yeah, count me in.
All right, awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm thinking you, I'm thinking Kristen, and then I'm thinking my 2 other friends. I'm thinking Dustin and Nathaniel as well for those 2 episodes. Those guys usually know a lot about their stuff when it comes to predicting stuff. I would invite Sean as well, but I you know, Sean is currently occupied with being a father, with being a new father. So I assume that will probably be taking up much of his attention for there. But with that being said, that is it, people. That is the podcast for today. Like I said, our second to last episode of the year. Like I said, we're gonna be having a lot of episodes going up throughout this week. Like I said, Dustin and I are hitting Bradley Cooper Hall of Fame this week. We got Maestro this week. We got Iron Claw. We got Zone of Interest. We got what's it called? We're gonna be coming back around to Ferrari, Godzilla -1, and Boy in the Hair. We still have a lot more stuff to do before the end of the year. So like I said, make sure you guys stay tuned for everything that is going to be going on this channel. Gal, thank you once again for coming back and joining me. Where can good people follow you on the interwebs?
Real. Yeah, so Film Toppings on Instagram, and basically everywhere. And yeah, some great films coming up on here too. I have seen The Iron Claw and The Zone of Interest, and I love them both, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And I also hope to see Ferrari and Maestro before the end of the year, along with The Color Purple, and I'm sure something else that I'm forgetting. But very excited for the end of the year, working on my top 10, which will be really interesting. And this is honestly like the most excited I've been in a while to share my favorites of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to start either end of December or beginning of January, my annual Golden Slice Awards that I hold on my list. So I hope to see your votes on the categories there.
Oh, absolutely. Send them my way. Send them my way. You know I'm going to vote for them. I love voting for that stuff. Yeah, I do mine for the TV awards. Dustin has his, what's called his NIFA movie awards.
That's right. I voted for that last year.
Yep, as well. So we'll have that going on. And yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to my top 10 of the year. It's going to be one of the most difficult top 10s of the year. And I'm also bringing on a couple of new guests that have never been on the podcast before that are I'm bringing on some heavyweights for that episode, to say the least. It's gonna be good, to say the least. But we're gonna have a lot of fun with that, and I'm looking forward to the Oscars episode with you. And as for myself, you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, as well as the official Talkin TV podcast across all platforms. Be sure to click the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. Follow us if you're watching us on Twitch. This episode will be available tomorrow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And as always, people, you guys know the drill. 12 seasons in a short film. We're almost done with our 5th season. Crazy to even think about. And watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next week.